For 9.3 circles, hopefully you guys did the activity on Desmos. Most of you had it done, but there's a few of you still haven't as of right now. So hopefully you guys can do that because it really will help you figure out circles. But the definition of a circle, you guys, is simply this. It is all points that are equidistant from some central point. Okay, that's what the official definition of a circle is. So it would make sense that we can come up with an equation of a circle, since we're talking about a distance that stays the same throughout, like a radius distance, right? That we can derive a formula for a circle, or the equation for a circle, from the distance formula. So if we define the center of a circle as h comma k, okay, and you saw that in the Desmos activity, if that is the case, then any point that is on the circle, if we're on an xy plane, we could figure this out because we know that x and y just represents a point that is on a circle that is a distance, the same distance, this distance, the radius distance from h comma k. So if I just substitute h and k for this xy coordinate for the center, what you'll see is the equation for a circle. Okay, so distance formula is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. We know that already. We've done some problems with that. So notice what we're doing is we're going to replace x1 with h, and we're going to replace y1 with k. Okay, and then instead of a distance, we're going to call that distance the radius. Okay, so the distance between those 2 points is the radius, so I'm just going to call it r. All right, now to simplify this a little bit, I can square both sides. So if I square this and square this, the square root goes away, and I'm left with x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. Now, one thing that I did see on the Desmos activity that was that is a very common mistake is that people, instead of writing the radius squared here, they were just giving me an r value. Okay, so if the radius of a circle is 3, then the equation is going to be equal to 3 squared, which is 9. Okay, so don't put 3 there, put 3 squared or 9. Okay, so that's just one mistake that I was seeing. If you guys have a circle that is centered at 0, 0, notice that h and k just simply go away. Okay, so this is the simplest form of a circle, and we don't have an h and a k. When the distance from center is just non-existent because it is at the center. But h and k, remember that h deals with the x, the movement of the x direction, and k always represents the movement of the y direction. Okay, so that's the distance from the center. So let's do a couple of these. It says a certain Wi-Fi phone has a range of 30 miles in any direction. If the phone is, sorry, let me get this thing out of the way. If the phone is 4 miles south and 3 miles west of headquarters, write an equation to represent the area within which the phone can operate via the Wi-Fi system. Okay, so what I would do for this one is this. I would call headquarters 0, 0. Okay, so if headquarters is at 0, 0, then so here's headquarters here. It says if the phone is 4 miles south, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to go south as downward direction. Okay, and then 3 miles west, that would be to my left on the coordinate plane. So I'm going down for 3 west. It says write an equation to represent the area within which the phone can operate via the Wi-Fi system. Okay, so it has a 30-mile range in any direction. So from this point, we can go 30 miles in any direction, right? So I'm going to call that distance there the radius of the circle. Okay, so to come up with an equation for this thing, I'm simply going to modify the center of the circle with my h and k. Okay, so since my x direction moved 3 to the left, remember that we want to make whatever makes this part, the x part, go to 0 is where the center would be. So since I went to -3, I'm going to add 3 here because a -3 would make it go to 0. So it would be x plus 3 squared plus y. Since I went down 4, I'm going to add 4 here because it's whatever makes it go to 0 squared is equal to the radius squared, which is 30 squared or 900. Okay, that would be your equation. I would prefer that you would just put the 900 there instead of the 30 squared. Okay, example 2 says write an equation for this graph. So we know that this thing is centered at 0, 0. Okay, so we're going to have an x squared. There's no h or k because that's just 0. So we have x squared plus y squared is equal to... Now here's the tricky part. What is r? Okay, we don't know exactly where this radius here crosses, right? We know it's around 5, but we don't know exactly where it is. So what I have to do is I have to find r using my distance formula. Again, the radius is just the distance from a point on the circle to a point in the center. So they gave us a point that's on the circle, they gave us the center, so let's find the distance. The distance would be equal to the change in x squared, so 1 minus 0 squared, plus the change in y squared, 5 minus 0 squared. So when I get this is equal to r, by the way. R is equal then to 1 plus 25, so r is equal to the square root of 26. So since typically, you guys, that x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared, if I just found r, and r is the square root of 26, if I square that, I would just get 26, right? So just to show you, this would be the square root of 26 squared, but I can simplify that, right? Because the square root of something squared is just that thing that's in there, right? So the equation is simply this: x squared plus y squared is equal to 26. All right, so 2b is one that's identical to that. So we can do that again. The only thing that's different is now that we have a movement, right? We didn't start at 0, 0. Now we started at, it looks like 1, 4. So for my equation, in the x direction, I went to the -1, so it would be x plus 1 squared. The -1 makes it go to 0. And then for the y, I went up, so it's going to be y minus 4 squared, since I went up 4, is equal to r squared. Now I need to find r again, so I can do that using my distance formula. Okay, so r is again the distance between this point that's on the circle and the point in the middle. So I can do the change in x squared, so -4 minus -1 squared, plus the change in y squared, which would be x minus 4 squared. So this is equal to the square root of, this would be -4 plus 1, which is -3 squared, plus 6 minus 4 is 2, so that's 2 squared. -3 squared is just 9, 9 plus 4 is just 13. So I could replace r with the square root of 13. Square root of 13 squared is simply 13. So final answer, x plus 1 squared plus y minus 4 squared is equal to 13. All right. Now, for example 3, they want you to write an equation for a circle if the endpoints of a diameter, which is the total distance across, right, are at 3, -3, and 1, 5. So, I mean, you could sketch this out if you need to see a visual of this. So 3, -3 is here. 1, 5 is up here. Okay, so this is our diameter. So we need to kind of figure out where the center of the circle is. Somewhere in here, somewhere. I don't know exactly where. I didn't draw that perfect, but let's find the center. Once we know the center, we can figure out the radius, and we can figure out everything we need for the circle. So to find that, this is why we reviewed midpoint formula in the very beginning of the chapter. So we're going to take the midpoint formula. We're going to do the halfway point of the x's. So it would be 3 plus 1, kind of the average of the x values divided by 2. And then for the y's, we have negative 3 plus 5 divided by 2. So 3 plus 1 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Negative 3 plus 5 is 2. 2 over 2 is 1. So our midpoint, or our center, is at 2 comma 1. Okay. Once I know that, I can create an equation. I do need to figure out the radius still, but I know at least my equation will start like this. X minus 2 squared plus y minus 1 squared is equal to my radius squared. Again, 2 makes this go to 0, 1 makes that go to 0, right? To figure out my radius, what I can do is I can take, since I know my diameter goes to these points are on the circle. So what I can do is I can take my center point, 2, 1, and I can use any of those 2 points to find the distance, which is my radius. So I'm going to use my distance formula. I'm going to do the changes in x between the center and either point. I'm going to choose this point, okay, just for fun. So I will do 2 minus 3 squared plus 1 minus negative 3 squared, which is equal to the square root of negative 1 squared plus 4 squared, which is equal to negative 1 squared is 1. 1 plus 4 squared is 17. So this would be the square root of 17 is equal to r, right? This is equal to r. So I can plug that thing back in here. The square root of 17 squared would just be 17. So final answer, I'll do it in blue here, would be x minus 2 squared plus y minus 1 squared is equal to 17. Okay, there's your example 3. Write an equation for the endpoints that have a diameter. All right, example 4. It says to find the center and the radius of a circle with this equation, x squared plus y squared is equal to 81, and then graph the circle. Well, remember that the equation for a circle is just x squared in standard form. If there's no h and k, it would be x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared. So in this case, 81 is equal to r squared. If we want to know what r is, we'd have to take the square root of both sides, which would be 9, right? So r is equal to 9. So it says find the center. The center, since there's no h and k, center is at 0, 0. Okay, and the radius is equal to 9. Boom, you're done with example 4. They do want you to graph it, so center 0, 0, radius of 9, so we'll go 9 in every direction. 9, 9, negative 9, negative 9. Put our points through there and just draw a circle as best we can. Boom, done. Example 5 says find the center and radius of the circle with this equation. Let me see if I can move this out of the way here. I'm assuming that that is a 0. Yes, it is. It's a 0. So this is just equals 0 over here. There we go. Okay, so it says find the center and radius of the circle with equation x squared plus y squared plus 4x minus 10y minus 7 equals 0. Okay, so to do this, you guys, what we have to do, and then they want us to graph it, what we have to do is we have to complete the square. So you want to get your x terms together. So x squared plus 4x, and then you always want to leave room. So plus something, because we're going to complete the square here. Okay, and then plus y squared minus 10y, so I just took that from these two pieces, plus something, is equal to, I'm going to move this 7 over, so 7 at the moment. So I added 7 to both sides. Okay, to figure out what these things are, we're just going to complete the square. So I'm going to kind of shift things this way so we have some room. X squared plus 4x, if we want to complete the square, remember we take half of the middle term. Half of 4 is 2, and then square it, 4. And then for the 10, we'll do the same thing. Half of negative 10 is negative 5. Negative 5 squared is 25. Okay? But remember, whatever you add onto one side of the equation, you have to add on the other side of the equation. So when I do this, I would this thing will simplify to x plus 2 squared plus y minus 5 squared is equal to 7 plus 4 plus 25. Okay, so again, how I got that was this, once we have a perfect square, which we created by completing the square, It's the square root of the first term with this sign and the square root of the last term squared. Okay, so that's what I did for both of these. And then, so let's just simplify this last little bit here for our final answer. X plus 2 squared plus y minus 5 squared is equal to 7 plus 4 is 11. 11 plus 26 is 36. And we're done. Okay, so that is example 5. Let's see here. What else do we want to go for? Let's see. I think that's probably all I'll have you guys do. So, and by the way, on this one, you guys, the radius of this thing would be 6, correct? So if you were to graph this thing, because this is 36 is equal to the radius squared, remember? So if you were to graph this thing, the center would be at -2 and 5, because that's what makes this go to 0. So -2, 5 is center, radius is 6, so we'd have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in that direction, 6 in that direction, 6 in that direction, 6 in this direction, and that's how we would get our circle and graph it. Okay, that's not perfect, but just to keep the video short, I'm just going to kind of estimate that, but that's how I would do it. All right, so guys, the homework, don't worry about this. I have a homework sheet attached on Google Classroom that I want you guys to do. Fill it out, take a picture of it, and then turn it in. And we'll see you guys in class next time. And feel free, you guys, if there are questions, if you are struggling with one or two of these, bring the questions to class. I always make these homeworks due later in the day, so I don't make them due at class time like I normally would. I make them due at 10 o'clock that night. So feel free to come to class with questions about this next time.